his support of the Obama administration, his support of the president, the things he did on behalf of this administration, and the closeness in which he worked with the president is most appreciated.
Most appreciated. A lot of love from the White House Chief of Staff Bill Daley, showering praise on Ambassador Jon Huntsman.
And I'm sure Jon Huntsman really loved hearing that one. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Karen Travers.
Every day at noon Eastern, and right here bringing you the latest in politics. It's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/Karen Travers. With that, what do you know today? What's got your eye?
Iowa cattle. It is big Monday in the Hawkeye State. Count them, 5 presidential candidates, for contenders, I should say. 2 of them, actually formal ones, are at the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition's meeting today just outside Des Moines. This is really the first event where you have multiple candidates sharing the same stage, but this campaign is not yet going despite us wanting it to get going.
That's exactly right. And intriguingly, there's one person who isn't there today, but his plane is. This is from CNN's Peter Hamby. Take a look at this picture that he snapped on the runway in Des Moines. That's right, Trump. He sent an emissary, and he sent his plane, Karen.
And it's a very subtle way to travel.
That's right. It is very inconspicuous. Next up today, it's Mitt's message. Former Governor Mitt Romney used an appearance in New Hampshire over the weekend to try out some new lines and to road test his argument that President Obama's health care law needs to be repealed, even while that imperfect Massachusetts law that he signed stays in place. This is a nuanced and a delicate dance from Mitt Romney. You saw the way that he fell into it with federalism first and foremost. It's just going to be so tough to make that case to Republican voters.
And he's trying to say, look, this wasn't perfect. There are things I would have changed. But let's talk about the economy and jobs, because he thinks that that's a message that perhaps he could beat President Obama on. He does not want to talk about health care. Hugs for Huntsman, as you heard at the top of the show. They may not be in office yet, but the Obama-Biden 2012 re-election campaign seems to already have a strategy here. Kill them all with kindness. That was Bill Daley, of course, talking about how much he appreciates Jon Huntsman, the current ambassador to China. He'll be stepping down to likely make that run for the GOP nomination. It's going to be fascinating to see over the next couple of months how awesome the White House thinks some of these Republican contenders are.
That's right. They love Mitt Romney's health care law. I'm sure they're going to love Mike Huckabee's obesity initiatives. They're going to love Tim Pawlenty for cutting the budget, you name it.
Sarah Palin had a great reality show. Everybody's great.
Indeed. And finally today, it's the Doughboy dust-up. He was the last living link to that war to end all wars, but there's a political war that is outliving him. It's about where to honor Frank Buckles, who just passed away, the last surviving World War I veteran. West Virginia lawmakers want him to now lie in state at the Capitol Rotunda. But oddly here, Harry Reid and John Boehner are in agreement on this, and they think that Arlington is a more appropriate site. I don't understand the politics at all, Karen.
And they haven't given a reason yet why they don't feel the Rotunda is the appropriate place. Rick, I looked up a couple of the numbers. 31 people have lain and stayed in the Capitol. Only 11 of them were presidents. So it's not something that's just reserved for presidents or lawmakers. It has been done before.
The last of 5 million U.S. service members in that war. We begin today's program with a very special guest. We're honored to be joined by the former chairman of the Republican National Committee, the former lieutenant governor of Maryland, Michael Steele, joining us here in Washington. And Mr. Chairman, I want to start with your take on this presidential field. Why is it taking so long to develop? Are Republicans worried about getting in the water first, worried about getting in the water against President Obama?
No, I don't think there's any worry there about getting in first or getting in the waters against the president. I think they're rather anxious to get in the waters against the president. I think what you're seeing is just sort of a spreading out, if you will, of the wings a little bit to sort of see what the mood, the climate is out there. What are the key issues that people are focusing in on? Obviously, jobs are going to be a big part of it. But for Mitt Romney, he's got a health care elephant in the room he's got to deal with among the base. You know, for Mitch Daniels, he's got, you know, the considerations at home with respect to the state legislature and what's going on now, as we see in Wisconsin and Indiana and Ohio. So each of these candidates are coming to the table sort of not tepidly, but with a little bit of, you know, reservation. And I think that you'll see over the spring and summer that amp up a little bit more. But I think they're anxious to get in there. They just want to make sure when they do, they land with a big bump, not a thud.
Do you think that that's the right strategy? I mean, would you want to see some of these guys getting out there and being a little bit more than just tepid about their willingness to run?
Well, again, I think it is a good strategy. There's no real need to jump into this right now. The president still has to set the agenda. We didn't have a budget from the White House or the Congress in the last Congress. They're now working on a budget. Those issues are going to be predominant. So I think for a lot of these candidates, they want to see exactly how the House the Senate and the White House work together to begin to lay down the markers, which will be the underpinnings of the debate for 2012. I think there's also a financial or fundraising component here as well. You notice with the Mitt Romney donors, some of them are saying, well, let's kind of wait and see who else gets into the race. We're not willing to write that check right now. That's a reflection of two things. One, the economy and the tight belts these guys have to deal with. And two, the reality that there's someone out there who's going to pique the interest of people, and they want to be on the right side of that, not on the wrong side of it.
You mentioned this budget battle that's going on Capitol Hill. A lot of talk about a government shutdown, which has been avoided for a couple weeks. We'll be back at it, though, by the end of next week. What's your take on this? Is this something that Republicans should really fear? I mean, we've seen this anti-spending climate is such rage in Washington and beyond. What's wrong with a government shutdown?
Well, I personally think there's nothing wrong with the government shutdown. I've been an advocate for it over 7 months now, but for the simple reason that it is the shocker. It is the reality check that the spenders need to have, that those who are trying to chart a different course need to have, whether they're Republicans or Democrats in the Congress. Everybody needs to come to the table and realize this economy is on the brink. And how we move forward is going to mean a lot to the average player out there, whether they're a small business owner or a mom and dad trying to raise their kids. The reality of it is we're all having to face this new frontier and get the sense that the Congress just isn't there yet. They really don't get the full meat and potatoes of the spending and the debt and the deficit that people are coming to grips with. And so I think it's important, and I think the Republicans right now have an opportunity to really put down some bright line markers here on spending. I hope they do. I haven't seen it yet. I'm hoping that we will see it in the next week.
Mr. Steele, getting you back to the 2012 Republican contenders, who has the best chance to beat President Obama, and how do they do it?
All of them and none of them. You know, that's the reality. One of the things that when I was chairman, we had to deal with immediately was the nomination process, and so we tried to stretch it out a little bit so that we wouldn't have a nominee in February. We're hoping to have a nominee sometime around late April, early May, depending on how things go. The goal was to really give these guys a chance to sort of get their feet in the water and to really test messages and themes against this administration. Barack Obama is a formidable opponent, not just as being the incumbent president, but as a candidate, someone who understands how to message to the people in a campaign scenario. So it's going to take a lot of grit and a lot of brawn to get out there and a lot of top-line messaging that I think is going to be important. And so my hope is that someone will emerge, and I don't think that person has yet, that really strikes a chord not just with the conservative base, but really those crossover voters, those independent voters who are going to be driving and determining who the next president is going to be.
You mentioned Mitt Romney and that elephant in the room around health care. He road tested this message over the weekend. How does he get beyond this? Do you think it's a disqualifier for him that he, according to the White House, produced a plan in Massachusetts that was the inspiration for the Obama health care plan?
I know. I'm sure that's a talking point his team does not want to have out there. But the reality of it is, I mean, it is what it is. And I think that, yeah, he's going to have to road test some messages. The Republican base in particular is very skeptical of the Massachusetts plan, the overall Obamacare strategy. And I think that for Mitt Romney, and I think he can do this, is to lay out very cleverly and very articulately what it is he wants to do with health care should he become president, number one. How did that factor into the decisions he made as governor of his state in putting in place the current plan there, and how there are differences between Obamacare and what he did. And I think that what's happened is the Dems have been able to very cleverly sort of mesh the two so they become one and the same. But there are some distinct differences, and I think it's going to be important for the president, for Mitt Romney to make clear what those are.
Mr. Steele, we love electoral map conversations here. Speaking for myself, I'm sure Rick does too. Looking at the map and where things stand right now compared to November of 2008, name the 3 states that you think that the Republicans are most likely to flip in order to beat President Obama.
Wow, that's a tough call to make right now. I like the map game too, and I think that we saw in 2010 that you really couldn't rely on that map to really give you a true sense of where the electorate was going to be. I mean, we saw, for example, incumbent Republicans go down in Utah in the primary. You didn't expect that. We saw, for example, opportunities lost in California, where there were some real chances 6-8 months before the actual election, where we thought, hey, this really could strike some gold here. I think when you're looking at the map, the obvious ones, the Ohios, the Floridas, the Californias will be in play. But what I'm going to be looking at are in some of the southern states. That's why the Democrats are going to North Carolina. They're going to plant some flags in the South, very much like they did in 2008 in Denver, in Colorado. So I will look for those sort of those non-mainstream, the go-to states in presidential elections. I think are going to carry a lot more weight, because the number to win is going to be a lot tighter than it has been in the past. And I think, a state with 7 electoral votes, 10 electoral votes, 3 electoral votes can make some noise.
And finally and briefly, a lot of questions we got on Twitter. What's next for Michael Steele? Any chance you return to elective politics? Are you going to sign on as a cable contributor somewhere?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm looking at doing some television. I'm certainly doing some writing. I'd love to come and hang out with you guys a little bit, keep the storylines going on politics, because it is about where the country goes, and I like to have a role and a voice to say in that. And of course, make some money, because I got to, keep the kid in school and get them graduated. So.
All right, Michael Steele, we'll have you back and advance all those goals. Really appreciate it. Former chairman of the Republican National Committee.